Hi, I'm Diane Macedo in New York.
And I'm Phil Lipoff. I'm Phil Lipoff in Uvalde, Texas, where a small community is banding together after that horrific and unspeakable shooting at Robb Elementary School behind me. The memorial is growing, continues to grow now, has 21 white crosses in front of it, 19 children, 2 teachers killed in that rampage. Now the second deadliest school shooting in our nation's history.
And we are learning more about those lives lost as President Biden says he will head to Texas soon. President Biden's calling on Congress to act on gun legislation, but Capitol Hill appears to be deadlocked again despite growing public support. And Phil, I know you're there in Uvalde. You've been talking to some of the family, but we're also hearing from the accused gunman's mother. She now tells ABC News that her son was not a monster, but that he could be aggressive, in her words. So what else are we learning about the suspect from those who knew him?
Right, and I think those comments raised some eyebrows. My colleague Matt Gutman did that interview with his mother, and she certainly said he's not a monster, but he could be aggressive. Matt also spoke to his grandfather, who said he barely ever talked, even when he took him to work. And Matt had said, well, what kind of things did you talk about? He said nothing. He was very quiet. Students who went to school with him said that he was quiet. Even one student said he kind of stalked him. Another young student said saw scars on his face. And she said, what's that all about? And he said, oh, I did it. You like it? I like the way it looks. So the more and more people we talk to, our teams talk to here on the ground in Uvalde, the more and more red flags you see pop up.
And Phil, we're also hearing stories of heroism, the teachers who protected their students at all costs, parents who ran in toward the gunfire to try to save their children. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it's instinct. It's instinct for teachers. It's instinct for parents. Diane, you're a mom. I'm a dad. We would do the exact same thing. If there was gunfire around our children, we would run. They were breaking windows, trying to get their children out of windows. The 2 brave teachers in those 2 classrooms, and that 4th grade classroom specifically, did everything they could to protect the children. But there was really nothing they could do facing down, you know, an 18-year-old wearing bulletproof armor and having an AR-15 style rifle. They did everything they could. One child even calling 911. Everyone did what they could. There were a lot of heroic actions that day. None of it seemed to matter.
Now, 17 other people were injured here, including 3 law enforcement officers. What do we know about their conditions right now?
Well, we know of the 17 people, Diane, 6 as of last night. Only 6 were left in the hospital, 3 adults, 3 children. The children, as of last check, 2 were in a good condition, 1 was in stable condition. I'm not sure of the conditions of the officers.
And we're hearing that local funeral homes are stepping up to help the families here, offering services for free. So how are these families and the larger community really planning to remember these victims?
Well, the funeral homes have reached out to funeral homes and have offered their services for free, and that's going to be a big deal for a lot of the families here in this traditionally underserved community. Funerals can cost an awful lot of money, and especially, you know, God forbid you're burying a child, the last thing you want to deal with is the financial aspect of it. So it's great that those funeral homes are doing that. This community, well, they had a vigil last night. You can see behind me, these are 21 crosses, each with a name on it, of the 19 children and the 2 teachers right in front of the Robb Elementary School sign. It's a growing memorial. There are balloons, there are teddy bears, there are flowers, and now these crosses showed up overnight. So everyone doing what they can to show that they love and cherish the children who are gone, but that's really all anybody can do right now.
Quite something to see a teddy bear in front of a memorial cross. Phil Lipoff, thank you. We're going to talk to you more in just a little bit. And authorities now say the suspect was shot and killed by a Border Patrol tactical unit officer roughly 40 minutes to an hour after entering the school. And that timeline is now raising new questions. So let's bring in senior investigative reporter Aaron Katersky, along with ABC's Kenneth Moton in Washington and former NYPD detective Mark Claxton for more on this. Aaron, there was security at this school, a fast response by law enforcement. We know the shooter actually wasn't wearing a bulletproof vest, just sort of a tactical vest, so he didn't have that kind of protection. So why did it take this long to take him out?
There are two separate parts of the equation here. One, Diane, is the response by law enforcement outside the school. We know the gunman had shot his grandmother and then had crashed a car outside Robb Elementary School. The first question is, why was the school not immediately put into lockdown? How many times have we heard of any kind of violent crime occurring anywhere near a school? The school is automatically notified and generally locked down. So that's one question. The second is, what did the responding police officers there do? We heard state police officials say they confronted the gunman, but there was no apparent attempt to fire at him. He was able to make it inside the school, and that's now a separate piece of the investigation. They're going frame by frame, any video they can find to see the gunman's movements and to see the response of the law enforcement officers. It seems that some of them did try to go in, but he fired upon them and tried to repel them from making entry into that classroom. And we understand that it's certainly possible that the deaths of the children and the two teachers may have happened in the first minutes of the 40.
So, Mark, when you look at how police officers are trained to handle scenarios like this, and you look at a school like this that had this level of security, what's your take on the response and the fact that this shooter was able to make it into the building at all?
Well, it's important to note that different jurisdictions have different expectations of their police responding to these type of incidents involving mass shootings in schools in particular. There are jurisdictions that have an expectation that the police should hold to a certain point. More jurisdictions are switching to the point where they are looking to engage the shooter, to draw fire, to kind of mitigate any damages, and to take on a more offensive position. The questions surrounding what occurred in this particular incident about whether or not the police responded in a timely fashion, and that's yet to be determined. And a lot of that is based on the actual operational tactics at that particular time. There's no one-size-fits-all response for police and when responding to these type of incidents and shootings. And you really have to gauge it according to the circumstances and the factors that are present at the time in which you are operationalized.
Now, Kenneth, Democrats are scrambling to try to enact gun control measures like universal background checks, which do have broad public support, but they still appear to have an uphill battle once again when it comes to Capitol Hill. So what is the latest on that legislative initiative and trying to find something that can get passed?
Yeah, Diane, a lot of talk on Capitol Hill, a lot of backroom conversations that are being had, but it's a lot of, I can tell you that while there's a lot of flurry on it, happening on Capitol Hill, it's all going nowhere fast because we know that Democrats are calling for federal reform on gun reform legislation, but it's an uphill challenge to get those Republicans on board. They are not budging on this. There hasn't been any type of major gun reform legislation that's happened on Capitol Hill in nearly 30 years. 86% of Americans support a red flag law that temporarily takes guns away from people deemed to be dangerous. A vast majority support expanded background checks. Senator Chris Murphy, the Democrat from Connecticut, where that Sandy Hook massacre happened, he's working with GOP Senator Susan Collins as he leads bipartisan talks. Sources say Leader Chuck Schumer has given Murphy roughly a week and a half to see if anything will come from this, what's possible. But our sources also say that what's possible is possibly nothing.
And Mark, officials say that many of the hallmark red flags of an attacker like this were there, including threats of violence, online stalking, alleged animal abuse. So what do you do? How can law enforcement better identify these kinds of warning signs to try to prevent an attack like this before it happens?
Oftentimes in these school settings, there are counselors and professionals, social services professionals, along with the school administration, who are actively engaged in making assessments of student behavior, making threat assessments for those students within the school. Outside of the school environment, it really is heavily reliant on law enforcement if they have prior experience or prior contact with this particular individual. If they had some sort of information or intelligence that there was a clear threat, then they would, have a more active role in it. But, law enforcement's position really is to mitigate and minimize the loss of life in these situations. And anything additional to that is in fact extra.
All right, Aaron Katersky, Kenneth Moten, Mark Claxton, thank you all. Phil?
Diane, as the Uvalde, Texas community reels from the second deadliest school shooting in our nation's entire history, the tragedy is reopening wounds for Latinos in a state with 40% Hispanic population that has seen several other high-profile tragedies in recent years. The Uvalde school shooting comes almost 3 years after an alleged white supremacist gunned down 23 people, the majority of them Latinos, at the Walmart in El Paso. That was back in 2019. It's regarded as the deadliest attack on Latinos in modern U.S. history. ABC's Maria Elena Salinas joins me now here in Uvalde. Maria Elena, it's very good to have you here. And my first question to you is this. The school behind us, Robb Elementary, 90% Hispanic. The shooter in this case, Latino. It is very different than what happened in El Paso. Still, the victims are Latino. So how does this community reconcile that and deal with it and then move forward?
No, this community has a lot of questions, and we know that this isn't race-related. This was just and we can't even call it random, because this is a person who had a lot of anger, and at the same time someone who was very quiet. I think what they have is questions. They want to know why he did it. They want to know why it couldn't have been prevented. They want to know why it took so long for their kids to be saved. I think it was over an hour that they were there. So yeah, this is a very Latino community, and I think that one of the things that helps them a lot is that it's such a close-knit community. You know, Latinos are very family-oriented. In this community, they call themselves Tex-Mex, Mexican-Americans, Tex-Mex. And the extended family goes beyond just the tios and the tias and the grandparents. It's also the neighbors. They all are coming together and supporting each other and just trying to find answers. But right now, I think they're still in shock. Before trying to really look for those answers, they're still in shock, trying to understand how this could have possibly happened and how can they go on living without their little ones.
Right, and that's why they need each other, right? Because there is this shock, this initial shock and trauma that happens after an event like this. I have some statistics here. According to the research organization Violence Policy Center, Hispanics are disproportionately affected by gun violence in the U.S. Nearly 70,000 Hispanics were killed by guns between 1999 and 2019. More than 40,000 of them were homicides. 40,000 of them were homicides. More than 44,000, actually. What do you make of those numbers? How do you reconcile those numbers?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's really tough. In fact, Latinos are twice as likely than their white counterparts to be victims of gun violence. Gun violence is a concern to them. Security is a concern to them. In fact, we hear that there has been an increase in gun purchase by Latinos all across the country. And, you know, a lot of them are because of racism. And one of the reasons why they're buying these guns is, as we see in what happened in El Paso, in the Walmart, they were targets, and they are targets of many hate crimes across the country. But if we talk about this particular community, this is a very conservative. We're in South Texas. This is a very conservative community. They're pro-guns. They like their guns. Yesterday we spoke to a pastor who said, you know, we're pro-life, pro-guns, and not so keen on immigration, on illegal immigration. So it's very conservative. They care about their guns. In fact, they even think that it's important to have these assault rifles because it's very rural, and they need to defend themselves from maybe predators or animals that are in this area.
Right, and I think what we learned, what we know with elections, and we know in towns like this, not every group is a monolith.
Yeah.
So as you point out, you're in a conservative area of Texas, 60 miles from the border. You talk about this community rallying around those who are in trauma and shock right now. We mentioned that 2 funeral homes are offering services for free, which is a beautiful thing to take that burden off their shoulders while they're dealing with such horrific loss. How else is the community helping?
I think they're rallying around each other. They're supporting each other. Yesterday we were at a church. We spoke to this pastor, and the pastor was telling us there's over 20 churches here, and this is a very, very religious community. So church is a way of supporting them, but also family. Last night we were at the home of a woman who didn't speak to us on camera because she was so distraught. But if you looked at it from a different point of view, you'd think there was a party there. But they were just surrounded by family members, by cousins, by the grandparents, by friends, being very protective of their parents. So I think they're relying on each other, on their neighbors, on their extended family for this support, for this love that they need, and also on religion, on going to their church and going to church services where they also find this support.
Maria Elena Salinas, thank you so much.
Thank you, Phil.
Appreciate the expertise and the reporting here.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back. A second shipment of baby formula has arrived from overseas with over 100,000 pounds of formula that could be in stores as early as this weekend. Meanwhile, lawmakers on Capitol Hill grilled federal regulators and baby food companies on their response to this formula crisis. The FDA now admits that it was, quote, too slow to act after a whistleblower raised concern about Abbott's Michigan plant. Senior national policy reporter Ann Flaherty joins me live now to talk more about this. Ann, these hearings, so much is coming out here. What have we learned so far about how we got here?
Well, a lot of revelations that came out yesterday in this hearing, Diane. What we heard was mostly from the FDA. They said that, there were egregiously unsanitary conditions at this plant. This is the Sturgis plant in Michigan, where Abbott produces this specialty formula, particularly with babies with metabolic disorders. They said that they were shocking conditions inside this plant. The other big revelation that they gave was that there was this whistleblower report. Somebody had filed concerns to the FDA last fall. That got lost in the mailroom, didn't make its way to the FDA leadership until spring. And Abbott told us that they didn't see this report until late April when Congress released it.
So delay, 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 delay. How did so many things fall through the cracks?
Well, I think this was just absolutely a perfect storm. I mean, you had concerns at the plant in 2019. The FDA wasn't allowed to get back in during COVID, during 2020. They finally get back in 2021. They have concerns, but by the time they get back, it's the Omicron wave. Abbott holds them off, says, COVID, please stay away for now. When they get back in, they find these shocking conditions. And by then, we already have reports of 4 babies who had grown ill from the formula that they drank in the plant. Now, to be sure, the FDA and CDC say they do not have conclusive evidence that this plant caused these children's illnesses, but they also say that they can't rule it out. So there still are really, really big concerns on this.
But yet, this shortage is only really happening in the U.S. Why?
Well, that's another thing. So 4 companies control 90% of the market. We have a trade and tax policies that protect domestic suppliers. So, the concern with this is that we possibly need to open this up to global suppliers.
So ABC is reporting that the investigation also found a range of serious food safety issues, that Abbott had not established a good quality control system. But the company's insisting, as you say, there was no conclusive evidence that these babies were ill because of something in the formula. So what is Abbott doing now to try to prevent this from happening again if they're not even identifying what the problem was to begin with?
So, Diane, they say that they have these protocols in place to catch this sort of thing, and they're denying that the whistleblower reports are even true right now. So they're casting doubt on it. We don't have a lot of good answers on this right now.
I'm out of time, but really quickly, any timeline on when we're going to see formula back to normal?
By the end of the month, by the end of June, that should be back up to normal. Abbott says they will have more formula on the shelves than they did in January.
All right. Ann Flaherty, thank you. Coming up, the touching handwritten letters to the children of Ukraine. We're going to tell you that story right after this break. Welcome back. For the children of Ukraine, life, needless to say, has been tough lately, but some are finding hope in handwritten letters from young boys here in the United States. Our Kira Phillips has that story.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God.
It's such a simple act of love.
That your Holy Spirit sustain all the people of Ukraine.
A prayer.
May they also have the strength and perseverance to defend their land.
And a piece of paper and a pencil. These boys have a message for the children of Ukraine.
That they will survive and the war will go away soon.
It's a call to action.
I want you to know that you will be able to live and play again like before. You are in my prayers now and always. Stay safe and happy.
That may somehow in some way, heal a heart.
Why do you want to help the Ukrainian kids?
Because all of them feel scared and I want them to make them feel better.
So when these Ukrainian children open up these cards, are they going to feel that love?
They're going to be reminded that God did not leave them alone. And if we can do that, we're changing the world.
McLean, Virginia is a long way from Ukraine.
You're doing a great act of love for people who need it right now, and it's the truth.
But for this Catholic leadership training program,
we're very grateful for what
Father
you guys
Vito Crincoli
We're proud of you.
tells these young boys
If you want to change the world, you have to do things that others don't do.
they're going the distance.
I give this guy a helping hand.
This is not a typical donation drive for Ukrainian children,
These are all of our toilet papers.
All clothing comes in here.
filling boxes for refugees in need. It's what's inside these envelopes that's the real gift.
Dear kid in Ukraine,
I know that must be scary living through this war, but it's going to be okay.
we want you to know that you are very strong.
There are no emails
Also, you don't not have to be scared.
or text messages.
Pray for you as many times as we can.
These boys are going old school. And soon they will discover the value of a handwritten letter.
They'll know that someone out there got their letter, they got the package, and they received love and encouragement, and it could be the word that allows his family to say, we have to keep fighting.
These letters carry more than just a message. They will create a memory.
This is medicine.
The United Ukrainian Relief Committee knows just how precious these letters are.
This will make the children smile. That's for sure.
Its director, Nestor Zarichny, and his daughter, Sandra, will get these letters to the children of Ukraine. 12 hours and 5,000 miles later,
We're on our way to the border. And
Sandra and Nestor arrive in their homeland, Ukraine.
Are we just going in? Yeah. Okay.
And in that cardboard box, those letters from America for the dozens of Ukrainian children forced to flee their homes, seeking safety from Russian troops in this school turned shelter. Shy, clutched to each other, overwhelmed by the unexpected. Today, a lesson in love these children will never forget.
We are praying for you.
Not one of these children has ever received a letter from America, let alone a child their own age.
You just keep on surviving.
Jacob's letter went to Sasha.
I want to say to him that he is so nice to me.
And Sasha hopes Jacob's letter won't be the last.
I just want to make them feel like they're strong and they're not alone.
I wanted to become a friend with him.
Hope in an envelope.
Привіт, мене звати
Ihor hears Johnny's letter.
My name is Johnny. I hope you are safe and healthy right now. I want you to know that all of the world, including God and Jesus, will always pray for you every day and every night.
Mom is brought to tears as her son Ihor comforts her with a kiss, writing a letter back to Johnny saying he now wants to come to America and become best friends. The value of a handwritten letter.
Teaching a kid to love is teaching a kid to live.
Message received.
O God, our Father, in the days to come, we beseech you to comfort the suffering, heal the wounded, and accept the souls of the faithfully departed into your heavenly kingdom. Amen.
Our thanks to Kira Phillips for that report. And those American boys will be receiving their letters from the Ukrainian children this week, and Kira will be hand-delivering them. I'm Diane Macedo. We'll be right back.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.